At the train station, a blinding light suddenly flashes through the window. When a homeless man turns around, he's shocked to see Prot appear out of nowhere under that light. At that moment, two boys shove an old lady to snatch her bag and run. Prot tries to help her up, but the police arrive and think he's the thief. You're watching Cine Digest, and this is Movie Recapped. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more awesome stories. The homeless guy and the old lady immediately say he didn't do it. A female officer asks Prot if he's traveling, so he explains he just arrived and already finished his trip. When she asks about his bag and ticket, Prot says he doesn't need luggage and he didn't come by train. Then she asks him to take off his sunglasses, but he refuses because this planet is way too bright for him. These strange answers make the cops arrest him. They also ask the homeless guy which gate he came from. He says he didn't come through any gate. A month later, in a Manhattan psychiatric hospital, Dr. Mark has a therapy session with Ernie, a man terrified of going outside because of deadly germs. Ernie won't take off his mask until Mark shuts the window, and he keeps complaining germs are everywhere, even in cafeteria food. Then a new patient is transferred from another hospital. Mark goes to the lab and takes another look at Prot before the doctors brief him. Police sent Prot to the hospital thinking he might be hallucinating from poisoning, but all his tests came back clean. No signs of disease or concussion. They diagnosed amnesia and delusions because he keeps saying he's from another planet. They gave him very strong meds, but nothing changed, which shocks Mark. They found no ID on him, no missing person report matching his description, but they did find some papers with weird symbols in his pocket. Then they bring Prot to Mark's office, and Prot comments on Mark's facial expressions while he speaks. He grabs a red apple from the bowl, says it's his favorite. Prot knows everyone thinks he's crazy, but he swears he's not. He says he's a little homesick and confirms his home is a planet called K-PAX, 1,000 light-years away in the Lyra constellation. To come to Earth, he used the power of light and traveled way faster than that. When Mark asks why he looks human, he explains he looks human here, but he looks like a K-Paxian back on K-PAX. This isn't his first visit to Earth. He likes coming here because he's curious about planets still in primitive stages of development. Later in the common room, a patient named Howie asks him about his planet. Prot describes 7 purple moons and 2 suns. Mark goes home to his wife Rachel and their daughters, but he's not focused on anything Rachel says. The next day, Mark shares the recorded session with Prot. They learn Prot's been to 64 planets and has been on Earth for 4 years and 9 months. He also says he's 337 years old. The doctors debate a diagnosis, but nothing explains why meds don't affect him. Mark wonders if Prot actually is an alien, and everyone laughs at him. In the next session, Prot eats a banana with the peel still on. Mark asks how K-Paxians reproduce. Prot explains the process is extremely painful. He pauses, writes some notes because he's making a report about everywhere he visits. After the session, Prot returns to the common room and greets every patient by name. Bess doesn't respond. Ernie explains. She won't talk to anyone because she fears smoke will come out of her mouth. She was brought there as a kid after burning down her house, though Howie says it was faulty wiring.
Meanwhile, Doris yells at a nurse and throws food at him when he asks her to leave, even though she never leaves her room. Prot approaches, notices the table is set for 2, and asks if he can join her. She calls him a gentleman, fixes her hair and makeup, and admits she's been waiting for someone for 11 years. In the lab, a doctor tells Mark about Prot's test results. He has real sensitivity to white light and can detect ultraviolet rays, which humans can't. In the next session, Mark turns off the lights and closes the curtains, so Prot finally removes his glasses. Mark asks about his family. Prot says children on his planet are raised by everyone, no families. No marriage, no government, no laws. They don't punish those who do wrong because they see an eye for an eye as stupid. At a family gathering, Mark talks with his brother-in-law Steve, an astronomer. He asks for tough questions to challenge Prot's story. Later, a nurse tells Mark that Howie has been standing by the window for hours. He checks on him. Howie says he's looking for the bluebird of happiness. Prot gave him 3 missions to complete to be cured. This is his first one. Mark looks outside and is shocked to see Prot brought Ernie to the garden. He rushes out, yelling at Prot for interfering with treatments, insisting Prot is the patient and he is the doctor. Prot wonders why Mark hasn't cured anyone yet. then hands over papers with answers to all of Steve's astronomy questions. When Steve sees them, he's stunned. Prot knows things amateurs could never know. Mark calls Steve to confirm, then asks if any astronomer is missing. Steve knows nothing about that. Days pass and Mark becomes obsessed with Prot, frustrated by the lack of progress. He works from home and ignores his family. One day, Mark takes Prot to an observatory where scientists fire questions at him. They want to know how he travels by light. Prot blinks and says he came back the same way. They don't take him seriously and keep questioning, so Prot uses their equipment, draws star system maps, and writes equations solving astronomical problems humans couldn't. Everyone is stunned, with no idea how he knows this stuff. Back at the hospital, Howie finally sees a bluebird and screams with joy. Patients and staff gather, everyone happy around the window. Mark notices even Doris came out to look. That night, Bess visits Prot and tells him he's the bluebird. Later, Ike asks Prot to teach him how to travel by light because he wants to leave. He worked as a porter in a fancy hotel for 15 years until suddenly everything smelled rotten. They sent him to the hospital where he's been 10 years. Prot is the first who doesn't smell bad to him, so Ike thinks Prot can help. And when Prot describes the lovely scents on his planet, Ike says he wants to go, but Prot explains he can only take one person with him. Soon, Mark discovers nearly all the patients believe they're going to K-PAX. Prot clarifies he told them only one person can go and announces he's leaving on July 27th at 5:51 a.m. He chose that date for safety reasons. That night, Mark wakes up terrified with a realization. He ignores his family again and rushes to his office to listen to recordings. Prot said he arrived 4 years, 9 months, and 3 days ago. Mark runs the numbers. July 27th marks the 5th year. That must be why Prot wants to leave that day. Mark suspects a traumatic event happened then. Rachel yells that he's always working and storms off. On July 4th, Mark's family has a barbecue and invites Prot. He immediately befriends the family dog, a dog that never liked anyone. Prot translates the dog's feelings so the kids treat him better. At lunch, they serve vegetarian food for Prot since he doesn't eat meat. Prot enjoys his time, and from the photos, he learns Mark has a son from a previous marriage. They barely talk. Prot tells Rachel that families don't exist on his planet, and she says he's missing something very important. While he pushes a girl on a swing, the sprinklers turn on. The sound of water terrifies Prot. The girl tries to get him to play, but he drags her away, saying they can't go into the water.
The men rush to restrain him, and Rachel pulls her daughter away. A nurse brings a sedative, but Prot calms down once the sprinklers stop. He mentions apple pie and calmly sits back at the table as if nothing happened. Next day, Mark explains the incident was triggered by water and insists Prot isn't dangerous. He suspects the water brought back a traumatic memory, so he wants regression therapy. Risky, but he feels time is running out. Mark looks for Prot, but patients say Prot left to visit countries before he departs. Doctors panic and alert authorities. 3 nights later, Mark is exhausted from calling shelters and falls asleep at his desk. In the morning, he sees Prot relaxing in a tree. Prot says he traveled a lot and informed everyone he's leaving. When Mark mentions hypnosis, Prot refuses, so Mark warns they'll use heavy sedatives if he doesn't cooperate. Doctors watch behind the glass as Mark hypnotizes Prot and digs into his childhood memories. Prot recalls a friend's father's funeral, but not the friend's name. The father was injured at the slaughterhouse where he worked and died, but Prot won't say which town. He gets anxious, heart racing fast. Mark asks for another memory. Prot remembers him and his friend looking at stars through the friend's father's telescope. Prot still insists he's an alien. His friend is in bad shape now, which is why Prot came back. Mark notices Prot's stress skyrocketing, so he wakes him, and Prot isn't aware hypnosis happened. Mark has his secretary search rural slaughterhouses in places Prot mentioned. Meanwhile, patients argue over who gets to go with Prot. Howie suggests writing essays. Prot agrees to read them. Prot agrees to another hypnosis session, remembers 1985. He and his friend, whom Mark calls Bate, both 17 and 175 years old. Bates' girlfriend Sarah was pregnant, and he was anxious about the future. Prot starts panicking, so Mark asks for another memory.
In 1991, Prot returns to visit Bate, now married to Sarah and working at the slaughterhouse. Then Mark is called away. Howie nearly killed Ernie while sleepwalking. Mark worries, but Ernie insists he's fine. It was amazing. While choking him, Ernie held his breath. Howie rushed him to the clinic and saved him. Ernie realized death isn't in his control, so there's no need to fear it. Now he's happier and ready for bolder challenges, like eating fish with a fork. Mark checks on Howie. He truly believes he cured Ernie. Now only one mission left before he's healthy. The next day, Mark hypnotizes Prot again and brings him to July 27, 1996. Prot says he's on K-PAX but senses something terribly wrong with Bate, so he rushes to Earth. He finds Bate drowning himself in the river, wanting to end his life because something horrific happened. Prot refuses to say what. His vitals spike dangerously, but Mark won't stop. He needs answers. Suddenly, Prot shoves him away and breaks down. Nurses rush with sedatives, but Mark stops them and gently wakes Prot. Some items fall from Prot's pocket. Mark picks them up. On his way home, he discovers Prot's pen in his pocket. It has the number 5005 and the word Salva. He rushes to a payphone, learns 5005 is the code for New Mexico. Salva turns out to be Salvation Army. Back at the office, Mark connects this with his secretary's search. They find a town with a river, a slaughterhouse, and Salvation Army, Guadalupe County. News from July 27, 1996, a man named Robert Porter drowned. He immediately flies there and asks the sheriff. Robert was smart and kind, lived on the edge of town with his wife and daughter. The sheriff takes Mark to the house and tells him what happened. A criminal broke in, assaulted Robert's wife, and killed her and their child.
When Robert came home and found their bodies, he broke, killed the attacker by snapping his neck. Outside, Mark sees sprinklers and a swing just like his own yard. Imagines Robert trying to wash the blood from his hands. Then, the sheriff takes him to the river where Robert's clothes were found. They assumed he drowned himself, but his body was never found. On July 27th, at the hospital, patients hold a small farewell party while handing in their essays. Mark calls Prot to his office for one last drink. Prot says he won't miss anyone on K-PAX, but he feels some people here will miss him. He advises Mark to reconnect with his son. Mark shows him a high school album with a picture of Robert Porter, confirming Prot and Robert look identical. When Mark tells him they're the same person, Prot denies it and asks Mark to take care of Robert after he leaves. Prot then returns to the party. Ike asks who's chosen. Prot says whoever goes to bed early gets extra points. Everyone runs to their rooms. As she walks away, Bess drops her crumpled essay on the table. Howie asks Prot about the last mission. Prot tells him to stay here and be ready for anything. Howie gives him the essays and leaves. Prot adds Bess's paper on top. Mark's wife Rachel brings him food. He thanks her and tries to be a better husband. At midnight, lights flicker across the city. Hours later, Mark wakes up. It's almost 5:51. He rushes downstairs. The rising sun reveals Prot chose sunrise as his departure. In his room, Prot removes his glasses and looks outside. A nurse sees him moving, then suddenly all the security cameras shut down. When Mark arrives, Prot is gone. But Robert's unconscious body lies under the bed. Nurses carry him out and patients are confused. They say that's not Prot anymore. Ernie says Prot left and they suddenly notice Bess is missing. They rush to her room, find her note on the bed. Howie reads it aloud. She was the chosen one. The last line says, "I don't have a home." Days pass. Mark continues caring for Robert's lifeless body because Prot asked him to. The man is alive, but doesn't move or speak. It turns out Prot was an alien who took over his friend's body after he ended his life just to visit Earth. Robert's personality only surfaced again after the trauma triggered by the sprinklers and hypnosis. Prot said he could only take one person because he needed a new body. Mark tells Robert about how the patients improved because of Prot and that Bess was never found. After work, Mark goes to the train station and with newfound courage, he finally reconnects with his son. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss videos like this one. Thanks for watching. And that's the end of today's movie.
Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Sin Digest for more amazing stories with Movie Recapped.